Welcome back to opinionsofree.com. It's a site where you can leave your opinion on various topics and subjects, and we don't slap you around if we don't agree with you because it's your opinion, and you can simply log on, go to a topic, leave an opinion. If you want to watch the video like this one, you can. And I try to make every video and opinion kind of unbiased. I'm not trying to tell you what to think and what to write down. I just want to know what you feel. Because you go into other platforms like social media, and I find that there's so much bitch slapping in there and ad hominem complaints, really, that it's hard to figure out exactly what the original post was about when you get about 10 streams down, right? Very annoying. And also, if you like it, please, consider subscribing. It's easy to get to. opinionsaretefree.com, not hard to find. And you can also leave a topic idea if you want, and I'll try to adapt that onto the site, okay? So here's a question I want to ask you, and I am kind of opinionated on this. Is the structure of the stock market destroying the economy and your financial future? And I tend to think it is, and I'll explain why. In the olden days, a company would produce a pencil or a rocket ship or a firecracker, whatever. And people would buy these things, and if people like these things, they buy more, and then the company would have to produce more of these things. They'd get more money, they put it into R&D, they make better products, they have stocks on the market, the stocks will go up because people are buying their products, and you have these valuations going up and up and up, and they did not the bubble, they just go up as a group. There are always some levels, like the Great Depression showed us, but they tend to go up. But I think it was probably in the late 70s or maybe early 80s, companies got wise. I mean, corporations, large ones, got wise. They started using that old saying that, we're too big to fail. That if you do fail, you're going to have to throw out thousands and thousands of people out of work, which is going to destroy the economy. And they realized that that soft spot was a perfect way to hit governments up on dollar investment. And what I mean by that is subsidies, reduced taxes. In other words, using tax dollars to support these corporations. Now, it didn't start in the 70s. I'm just saying they became, I think, very prominent from that point onwards. As you recall, we had that economic issue with the cost of oil and whatnot caused by geopolitical uncertainties, much like the one we're facing now. So again, corporations realize that they can get interest, monetary interest from governments and use that. And that would push up stock valuations, where the creation of a better product, was certainly important, but was never really it was probably not the most important thing anymore. It was the question of how do we keep our stock valuations high so we can pump them, get more investment, so on and so forth. And if you know how money funnels downwards or upwards, it always funnels to very few on top, okay? Now, there are those who are saying, hold on, don't be silly now. The stock market is doing really well now because the economy is doing really well in both Canada, the U.S., so on and so forth, or more the U.S., because most media is centered around the U.S. anyways. But you consider the incredible numbers of people who are living underneath your overpasses and in your parks and in your communities that don't have a place to turn to. Then you have to ask yourself, is this what a better economy would bring us? No. I think that's what an economy will bring you when money is being squeezed and put into the hands of a small few. And you consider how many people actually own stocks. It's not a large majority, it's a small minority. And that small minority, overall, only a sliver owns most of those valuations. Only a sliver of the population owns most of the valuation on the NASDAQ and so on. So it is not a broadly expanded market that is benefiting everybody equally. And those entities, like we're talking about pension funds that invest in these stocks, and they're scared poopless because if those valuations go down, they may not be able to honor their pension requirements, their pension commitments. Governments, are going through this right now. And so there is the need to keep the valuations up, period. And when they drop, and if they do drop a lot, you will see governments then turning to other methods of making or creating income. And how will that be? Well, they can't tax a population that is overtaxed and is living underneath an overpass, can they? And typically, you're not going to go to the small percentage of ultra billionaires and say we're going to take 50% of your money because like, people will scream out that's communism, or whatever. So most likely it's going to be a system where they're going to have to find new ways of creating assets and then taxing those assets. Assets probably never thought you had, since no one told you there were assets. Like your house, for instance, you get taxed on your house if it goes up in capital gains or the value. Now in the U.S. they do have that, and in Canada they do not. In Australia, I'm not sure how they do it, but then you've got to create basically more assets. So you essentially tokenize and monetize everything that can be possibly looked at as being an asset. And once you increase the asset class that the individual holds, you now increase the ability to tax that asset because you can now classify that person as wealthy. Okay? So if you have a house that you spend 25 years paying off and is paid off, and you pay taxes for 25 years to support that house, and you bought the roof and you fixed the foundation and you fixed the plumbing, so on and so forth, you think, well, I've got this asset, but you don't have an asset. What you have is a debt. And if you don't believe me, stop paying your taxes. See how long you own that asset. Okay? So the valuation of that asset has to be maintained by tax inputs, your property taxes, for instance, and also whatever else, usage fees and blah, blah, blah. So now governments can say, well, you've got that. That's great. But you see, you've got this capital gains on there, which is an asset, and we won't take it right away because it's tough. So what we'll do is we'll wait till you start your house and we'll take it then. For those communities or those economies right now that are not taxing your home equity, that'll be a delayed taxation plan. In the U.S., again, you do have some equity tax that's a little different right now. And then you have to look at what else do people have. For instance, if you have an unused item in your house, it can be considered a source of income if it's used properly. So by creating new asset streams, you also create new tax ability. Okay, so an example, you have a big house, 4 bedrooms, your kids grew up, they moved out, and it's just you and the missus or whatever, and you now have unused space. Well, that unused space has a market value. When you have rentals are hard to find, all right? And you have a double garage, but you only have one car. Well, that second garage has a value, okay? So whether you loan or lease or rent that garage space out, you now have to include that in your income. If you rent out some rooms, you're including that in your income. And if you don't do it, you can be taxed on the lost value to the government because they're saying, listen, you got a couple of rooms there that can probably earn you $1,000 a month, and a garage that can earn you 25 or $50 a month. And you don't have to rent them out, but there's a value, and we have the right to tax that value or even unrealized value. There are countries now that are actually taxing unrealized capital gains. So they're taxing the capital gains you could make in the future because they need the money now because they're so in debt because of stupid policies that have eroded the ability for them to pay the debt. So the creation of assets will simply mean that there's more of a tax stream, and that is how individuals are going to be taxed even further in the future, rather than taxing other systems that will possibly erode at the value of the stock market. All right? That's just my opinion, of course. So let's look at another possibility. You look at derivatives. What are derivatives? Well, derivative is something derived from something else. Okay, so again, if you were to take 1,000 homes in an area where 80% of the people have moved up and gone out, and only essentially the principal owners of the homes are still there, so you have unused space, you can actually get a valuation of all of the unused space. Okay, and you can say that now you can put that together as a derivative. Okay, value, and now you have to figure out how to make money off that value. And even if the person who owns the house only gets a little drip of that, every time there's a transaction, money being collected, money being paid out. And we're not talking about the fact that, or we should add the fact that the valuation of the dollars that are being taken are being eroded by the cost of actually taking in those dollars and redistributing them. Okay, because money is not taken in and redistributed for free. Someone is being paid to do that. And we're talking about government employees we can talk about later. But the point is that there is a valuation there, and every time there's a transaction, somebody makes money on that transaction. And this is will be where tokenization is going to make massive amounts of money for small groups of people who basically control the flow of the transactions. All right. So imagine in any given year, you have 50 new transactions somehow attached to your estate, whatever those are, even if they're small, incremental. Multiply that by the number of people in your community, the number of people in your country, the number of people in your state, the number of people in your province, whatever, and you can see how much money stands to be made by the money managers. I'm going to call them money managers, the companies that actually manage the transactions. How much of that will be skimmed off for taxes for governments that are trying to find new ways to make money, and it's an enormous amount of money. I tell you, if I could start a company tomorrow that made 0.00001 cents on a transaction, and I can scale it up, I'd be incredibly rich. I know they're doing that right now. So we see that the valuation of the stock market in whole, the way it's structured with the creation of products that really have no particular value to you as an individual, because they're not making a better product. They're simply finding new roulette wheels for you to put your money on within the stock market system and new ways to gamble. With the majority of the winnings going, of course, to the money makers, the market makers, right? And the casino, which is how it usually goes. With that is the stock market system now, the way it's working now, basically making you poor, destroying the economy, destroying your ability to maintain your equity valuation in the future, to have money to retire on when you have to sell your house and move to an old folks home, to leave money to your kids who are not being criticized because they're apparently inheriting money that they never earned, while you increased your valuation, like your equity, while you were asleep. You see, this is the narrative that's being explained and distorted right now to make you a person who has worked really hard in all your life and have maintained some kind of an estate, even a small one, to make you the enemy of the future, right? I see it coming. Anyways, opinionsarefree.com. Leave your opinion on this sort of topics. I know we kind of brought it up a little bit, but there are so many parts of this, like a face of a diamond. There's so many different parts of this. Is the stock market system essentially designed simply to make more money for a small group of people? Probably yes. Are companies using tax inputs as an excuse to essentially not make better products, but just make sure their valuations stay high and they funnel more money into these CEOs? Well, you consider how much money the CEOs of the top American banks are making this year. A quick Google. Funny phrased. But the number I get here, the compensation of American bank CEOs is expected to remain high, with many receiving annual compensations of around $40 million. Okay. $40 million compensation of one bank CEO. Times the number of CEOs in the larger banks, and some of the small ones will make less. How long does the average American have to work to earn $1 million, or the average Canadian, or the average Australian? Let's just say you make $55,000 a year. Okay, you can do the math to figure out how many years rather it would take you to earn $1 million. And a bank CEO that doesn't actually give you a product, doesn't produce a product. They simply move money from here to here to here. Okay, is making $40 million. And you can say that that's earned because the bank makes profits. Yes, but again, no bank is creating any new products for you. They simply move the money from here to here to here, and the money is taken from here, feed, moved here, feed, moved here, feed, moved here. What products are they making exactly that are increasing your net worth? Except for maybe if you own some stocks in that particular bank, right? So you see, it's a shell game. And most of us are on the losing end of it. Anyways, opinionsarefree.com, okay? So leave your opinion. There you go, opinionsarefree.com. Please subscribe. I'd like to expand this site. I'm doing this basically out of my own pocket, and I don't mind doing that. But I would like to get some more input from this friendly audience out there, okay? And again, you may not agree with what I said. Just leave your opinion and have yourself a great day. And really, I hope this whole shabazzle in the Middle East, which is going to increase oil prices, push up inflation, which increases the interest rates charged. Stupidly, again, because increasing interest rates will not lower the cost of items that are pushed up because of geopolitical tension. They simply mean that you are going to have a harder time paying off your debts. And so you see things are going to get a lot worse in the next 3 to 5 years, in my humble opinion. You can talk about that too. Opinionsofear.com, okay? Leave your opinion. Please subscribe. Have yourself a great day. And watch your ass, because no one else is going to do it for you.